Now, let's say your database is there, okay, which needs storage. Now, to need a storage, what will happen that your pod is what? It has done the work, it has done the things, or if it failed, it dies, right? It dies. It doesn't do any other thing. So for that, we need what? We need a PVC, okay, where we can store the data, right? Where we can store the data. So for that, we need to create the PVC. Now, how does the PVC works, right? The PVC works in a simple this format. PVC will request, right? PVC will request the storage. It says that I need a storage of 1 GB where I can read write the data once. Okay, there are access modes. Is a read write once, read write many, right? So it will say that where I can read write the data once. And in this case, it says that I will create a PVC which will be kind of the persistent volume claim with the MySQL data name. So I'll try to claim that first. Now, once you have done this, PVC will basically request the storage and it will bind it to the persistent volume. This is the one which will play all the tasks. It will bind it to the volume, and from there, this volume is mounted to the pod. Means at each pod where we are saying volume and things, right? So those are volumes somewhere here, right? So this is the flow of the PVC. This is the flow of the PVC where PVC requests for the things and you have to then bind it to the PV, and from there on it will bind it to the volume mount. Okay. Now, now the point is that PV if you is that warehouse. Okay, PVC is your request. So if you will run this, so if you see here under the storage, so you see we have created the one is created via the stateful set, right? And the other one you see running via 6970 seconds. This is being created right away. And there are no associated PVs for that. So that is why they are in pending state. But if you will write a persistent volume claim for that, for this claim, so they will come back into the ready state. Okay, they will come back into the right state. So that is where the PVC and PVs are important because PVCs helps you to uh, PVC helps you to request the data, right? It will help you to request the space, what kind of access mode and things are needed. Now, a lot of time, example, lot of time we have to run or we have to store, the data in form of some environment variables. We need to pass the data as an environment variable. Like you see, we pass the MySQL root password, right? We need to pass the name of the environment that, okay, it is production, it is QA, it is staging, it is live, whatever it is, right? Based on the environment. And based on that, the value get changes. Okay. It is not only that, but let's say you want to store some other settings like logging level, right? Like the some feature flag you want to enable that, okay, if this value will be true, then only you have to, like, then only this container will work, otherwise it will not work. You want to set some scaling settings or anything or all of those things, wherever you want to put those configuration, this all falls under the config map. This falls under the kind name as config map. Config map is nothing, it's basically kind of the environment file and the value which you can store all the environment related files. For example, here if you see we have the app config created, which has like random data known as the app mode production and log level known as info. So let's try to run this. We'll save this. Now you see this config map is created and you can find this config map under the configs. Right under this configs, you can find this config map. Now you see this has created this app config. Remember? App config. It has one key as app mode and one key as log levels. So you can have your data like this here, app mode and log levels. Now to fetch this value, right? To fetch this value, remember in deployment.yaml in stateful sets, here in the stateful set, we were calling config map value, right? The secret key reference here. So like this, we can call the config map value. Okay, so that we point that value config map to in the code, and code will pull that value automatically. Okay, the second important thing, config map are very, very important when you work with a larger system, when you work with a multiple environment systems. Because if you see, let's say you have to change here the environment value, right? The from production app mode, from production you want to change to development, or log level from info you want to change it to debug, right? You want to debug the thing. Every time you will not go inside the deployment or the inside the container and change, right? What will be your best place to change? Your best place will be your config map, right? The config map is the best place. It is the best value where you will change all the values, and as soon as save, it will just refresh all the settings on their own. So that is the reason we use config map, where we can store all the environment variables, we can store all the important settings or the application or the image settings, whichever we need for our purpose. So this is about the config map. Now, if we have to use it in the pod, example, if I have to use it in the pod, I will call this like this. I'll call like environment from, and instead, like remember, we give secret key reference. Sorry, we'll give secret key reference. We'll give the config map reference, right? How to call in the pod? We'll give using the config map reference and the name of the config map. My name of the config map was what? App config. So this is how I can call it in the production or into the pod. Sorry. Now tell me one thing. If you have a password to store, will you store in config map that or anywhere else?